Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to all the City Biz viewers for being here today, and thank you to our special guest. I'm very excited. My name is Ellen Keiley. I'm with EMK Consulting Group, and I have been writing for Lawyers Weekly. I've been writing for Business of Law Insider, and now I have the pleasure to conduct an interview for City Biz. So I'd like to start out by welcoming our guest, Gary Bubb. I'll just tell you a little bit about Gary, and we'll let him say some more. So Gary is a shareholder in the Corporate and Business Department and Mergers and Acquisitions group at Ruberto, Israel, and Weiner in Boston. He has over 35 years of experience representing clients in a variety of industries. Gary is a member of numerous professional and bar associations and has even been named a top lawyer by Boston Magazine, which is pretty cool. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I gave a brief overview, didn't do you justice, so I'd love to hear from you personally, just more about yourself and your practice.
Oh, you did me quite a bit of justice. I have been doing this for a long time. I've been a lawyer for over 35 years. I've been a Massachusetts lawyer the entire time, so my entire practice has been in Massachusetts. However, I was raised in New Jersey, and then I came up to school here a long time ago, back in 1969, and I've been here ever since. And like I say, my entire practice is Massachusetts based. In general, I'm a corporate attorney. The largest portion of my practice has to do with mergers and acquisitions, buying and selling companies. I'm also a tax lawyer. I got a graduate tax degree at Boston University. And I've fortunately been able to use this tax background in my overall legal practice.
Yeah, there's a lot of corporate lawyers out there, but there's not a lot of corporate lawyers with tax expertise. So I'm sure that sets you apart, and I'm sure your clients appreciate that.
Yes, as it turns out, in general, since a large part of my practice is mergers and acquisitions, most tax practitioners will tell you that it gets to their desk pretty late in the game. Many times it's too late to actually fix the problems that have already begun before the tax lawyer got in there. However, in my particular practice, we're sort of a mid-sized firm, so I get to have input early on in the game. So I get to structure transactions in the best possible way at the earliest point, rather than when it's very late or too late.
So mergers and acquisitions, what does that mean? So what does your sort of day-to-day work involve on a transaction?
Yeah, M&A, mergers and acquisitions, it's just buying and selling of companies. My practice is largely U.S. based, although we do handle transactions with incoming transactions with foreign investors or buyers. It's exactly what you think it is. A company probably in our practice is in the lower end of the middle market. They're about ready for a large investment from private equity, or they're about ready to sell out to a private equity firm or a strategic buyer, somebody in their industry. And we handle it from cradle to grave. Hopefully we get in there early. This is on the sell side, of course, when a company is selling. So we try to handle it from cradle to grave, right from the letter of intent stage right through the closing. We also have plenty of, I would say, acquisitive-oriented clients, in which event we're on the buy side, and then we get to exercise a little more control over the transaction. But I represent both sell side and buy side in buying and selling companies.
Interesting. So what does a typical transaction involve? You said it involves everything, I imagine. How long does a transaction take? Does it depend on the size, I imagine, and the complexities of the attorneys involved and how amicable everyone is?
Yeah. Transactions generally take 3 months longer than everybody expects them to. The client generally intends to close within 2 or 3 months. It usually takes 6 to 7 months. In general, if you're on the sell side, people just aren't ready for the intensity of the experience that they're about to go through, both from ownership right down through rank and file employees. I'm so used to it. It's almost it's so rote. It's hard to pick out what the important points are. But the owners will get involved early. They'll be involved in letters of intent. Maybe you engage an investment banker, but you start off with letters of intent, prospective buyers. Then there's a large due diligence phase. At some point or other, the actual buyer and seller will start to hook up. The lawyers get involved. Intensive negotiations over what should be a standard agreement, and in large part, it really is. But buy-side attorneys and sell-side attorneys, they're accustomed to the routine, but it always takes longer than we think it's going to, and we always overpromise. And both sides, the sell-side lawyers and the buy-side lawyers, have always overpromised about how quickly they'll be able to do it. And we don't throw each other under the bus. I'm sorry, I'm really hammering this point, aren't I? It takes longer. It takes longer than the client expects. And it is quite detailed. Due diligence is very detailed. The negotiation of the purchase agreement is very detailed. Key issues are generally indemnification, whether there's going to be insurance for representations and warranties, whether there's going to be an earnout. On the sell side, is the buyer expecting the key shareholders to roll over a portion of their equity so they won't get paid cash? They'll be paid with equity in the buyer, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite technical, complex. And of course, I'm a tax lawyer. I haven't even talked about the tax issues in structuring the deal. Very complicated, takes longer than you think it will.
Okay. Do you ever work with franchises or restaurant chains or anything like that?
My firm has a very large hospitality practice. We work with restaurants all the time. We do have a franchise practice, which is sort of burgeoning at this point, and it's less mature than our hospitality practice. But we do work with both.
So, what are some common mistakes would you say a new business owner makes when they start a business?
Yeah, there are some fairly common mistakes. Particularly in the tax environment right now, choosing the tax treatment. Here I am, a tax lawyer. I'll go with that first. Choosing the tax treatment is very important right now. The choice of the entity, it's almost always going to be a limited liability company simply because of the ease of governance, things like that. But trying to decide what tax treatment to get, whether a C corporation, an S corporation, or a partnership, that can become complicated because of well, I don't know how recent it is. In the past few years, if you're taxed as a C corp, your shareholders, if they meet certain criteria, can sell without incurring any capital gain tax. That's important. In other words, it's a mistake right at the beginning to not hire an accountant who crunches the numbers and tells you, okay, here's based on what you project as your activity, et cetera. Here's the tax treatment you should have. Other common mistakes are raising money from friends and family in sort of an ad hoc way, which winds up violating securities laws. And even though they're your friends and family, you'll find out when things go sideways, it can get ugly. A lot of new businesses don't like the idea of having to pay tax withholding on their employees, which is what almost all the people who work for a new company are employees. They're not independent contractors. But the new business owner is going to try to avoid having to W-2 their people, and they try to treat them as independent contractors, and thereby avoid the withholding issues. Those are probably the three biggest issues with a new business owner.
And I'm curious. So, artificial intelligence is such a huge topic everywhere these days. It impacts every profession. And recently, I heard a case around a lawyer actually relied on artificial intelligence to get case law. And it turns out it was completely incorrect. Artificial intelligence actually made up the case law, and he got into trouble for that. So I'm just curious your point of view on artificial intelligence and the practice of law. Where do you see it going?
I'm a big fan. I like it. I think that probably over the next couple of years, it'll kind of settle into a very reliable mechanism that lawyers will be able to use right now. Obviously, the case you described, I think that was some personal injury lawyers down in New York, and their brief contained something like 6 cites to completely fictitious cases. And so they were, I think they got fined. I don't know if it was the Board of Borrowers or just the judge in the court, whatever. The 2 lawyers were fined $5,000 apiece, and it was just a very bad story. But I find AI to be excellent. I use Chat GPT quite a bit. You can't rely on it for a legal conclusion, and I simply, I probably would use it in a brief, but I'm not a litigator, so I don't have to do that. So I deal with hard contracts. So I can kind of plug in a very dense paragraph. I can plug it into Chat GPT, and what kicks out is a little more plain English, might be a little more understandable. So that's somewhere that I can use it. Although I've actually had discussions with other lawyers with respect to, the density of legalese in legal contracts. And my view on that is we're never going to change it. It's too baked into the practice. The lawyers who operate in the area, I'm talking about large M&A deals, large credit facilities with 200-page credit agreements, which are very dense and have so many double negatives and trapped clauses that modify something 3 pages earlier. But that dense legalese is understood by everybody. Everybody works with it. And if you try to move it to plain English, you're going to have trouble because you don't know what tripwires you will have tripped, and you don't know what part of American jurisprudence you have now stepped on, because your plain English, runs against a history of case law that led to the legalese that you're trying to work with. So I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence. I have actually used it during client conferences just to check myself on some things where I know enough that I can trust the input I'm getting. So yeah, I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence. I think it's going to be very important in the legal profession, but it's not ready yet. It's probably a couple years away.
So on to another topic I find incredibly interesting is cannabis. That is another area that has exploded. Everywhere I go, I'm now seeing a billboard. I'm seeing, whether it's in Cape Cod or Boston, whatever it is, and you're seeing dispensaries pop up everywhere. I see that you're part of the cannabis group at your firm, and I'm just curious if you have any thoughts around that and other particularly unique challenges within these dispensaries and setting up a deal.
Yes. Yeah, we do have an active cannabis practice. Since I'm on the tax side, that's pretty well understood by the accountants and by the tax lawyers. You have certain choices you have to make that are boring, and I won't go into. The problem with cannabis is it's a scheduled substance federally, right? You're dealing with legalities on the federal level. Massachusetts, in other words, a controlled substance federally, legal in Massachusetts. You have to watch out. So our engagement letters obviously address the fact that if we're representing a client with respect to cannabis, we're talking about a controlled substance. And so there's some caveats that go into that. Yeah, my input, it is exploding. There had been a lot of, I was going to say, from my experience back a couple of years ago, there was a lot of Canadian money coming in, and it really was exploding. My section of the practice has kind of settled down because the questions are fairly standard, and the accountants usually get it right, so they don't need that much tax advice. But it's a growing area. But I would sort of like artificial intelligence, probably a couple of years away before cannabis comes off that Schedule 1. So lawyers are a little bit leery about the whole thing. But you gotta be in there because it's just going to keep coming.
And then circling back to, starting businesses or buying businesses, if one wanted to sell their business, what would be their first step? Who should they go to first? A lawyer, or how does it work?
Well, you've probably already got a lawyer. Assuming the lawyer is competent at M&A and is good at the sell side, depending on what part of the middle market you're involved in, I would probably recommend it. Get an investment banker. you need to have already engaged competent counsel because you've got that already. I would look for a good accounting firm if you haven't already got one, because they're going to be very important in due diligence, and they're just going to be very important. Very good accounting firm. And, if you're in the kind of, a significant part of the lower end of the middle market, or if you're in the middle market, you'll go get a good middle market investment banker to kind of handle whatever's about to happen, whether it's going to be an auction, whether it's going to be a financial deal or a strategic buyer, et cetera, et cetera. Investment bankers are extremely good at what they do, and they are expensive, but almost invariably they're worth it. So I think, assuming you've got, competent counsel and an accounting firm, I think you would go to an investment banker.
So you have a really interesting practice, and I'm curious, what made you want to become a lawyer?
Nothing. I was out of college. I may have told you this story previously. I was out of college. I was working at an insurance firm. I was a property examiner for an insurance firm. I just wasn't feeling motivated or like I had a very good career path going, and I hadn't paid much attention. I kind of floated through college. I literally, and it's the truth, I literally flipped a coin. I figured, oh well, let's see, I should be a doctor or a lawyer. Those are prestigious, probably good, good money, et cetera, et cetera. I really didn't have a life plan at all. Literally flipped a coin. It was kind of heads, I'll be a doctor; tails, I'll be a lawyer. Came up heads, doctor. And I realized right there, I don't want to study anatomy. I just realized I wasn't that interested. And so that's it. I went to law school. I am extremely pleased that that's how it turned out. But I did not want to be a lawyer my entire life. I went through college as a philosophy major. I did not intend to go to law school. And I didn't make the decision to go to law school until I was probably 3 years out of college. And then at that point, I was already working full time, so this is some local color. I went to law school at night, Suffolk Law School, and I went at night, and that's a good gang of people to go to law school with. They weren't, misdirected like me and having no bearing in life. They were pretty much, everybody was working full time, so everybody knew that they were here for a reason, and they were pretty committed to what they were doing. And it was a very good group of people that were my, compatriots through the law school experience. But yeah, it's not a lifelong desire of mine. Literally a coin flip.
Well, it's always nice when you fall into doing what you were meant to do. So that's great. And tell me, what do lawyers like yourself do outside of work?
That's a good question. If they're like me, they're pretty active in recreational sports, although as it turned out, every injury I ever incurred, and I was very active. I was a jock, no doubt about it. Played basketball, football, baseball. Every injury I've ever had became arthritic, and most of those joints have been replaced. So I have 2 replacement knees, 2 replacement hips, and my entire lower lumbar spine has been fused. If that wasn't the case, I would be skiing a lot. I would be, playing basketball and softball and all that all the time. And my fellow lawyers are all into sports. For some reason, a bunch of them are into cooking. I have no idea. The guys, I have no idea what that's about. But other than sports, recreational sports activities, and being fairly, religious followers of one or more professional or college sports teams in the area. Other than sports and recreation, the hobbies and interests of lawyers vary significantly.
I am sure they do. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gary, for doing this interview with me. Thank you for your time. Thank you to City Biz viewers for being here. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Ellen.